Welcome to the conversation. My name is Shannon Taylor. I'm the Executive Director of Blacks and Jews in Conversation. We have an added feature here tonight. We have not one but two sterling personalities. First, we have one of our co-chairmen and founders, Judge Jerome Hornblass. And with him, we have the Executive Director, founder, and chairman of BZion, one of the sponsors of our annual missions of judges to Israel, Mel Parness. Both very close friends. Mel is now emeritus status. I hate that description, emeritus status. I don't like to use that because they're going to apply it to me very shortly. And emeritus means that you must merit it. And I know there's going to be a huge hue and cry when it's applied to me that there's something lacking there and I'll have to fight it off. But that's why I have our own chairman right in the room to make sure that I have all my cards in the right basket. And we're going to start off with the discussion. First of all, I wish everybody happy holidays. This is a program that celebrates all nationalities, all creeds, all backgrounds. And this is the holiday of Hanukkah and the holiday of Christmas coming up. And I know Kwanzaa's coming up as well. But right now the first holiday that will be reaching us will be Hanukkah. And gentlemen, would you please tell us, first of all, I hear the latest in menorahs is actually not only they have it with oil, which is the actual miracle, but an oil or a light you don't have to light. That's something right up my alley. And you have programs coming up this Monday, the 29th. Please tell us about that. Thank you.
Well, the 29th, there will be a memorial for the people who passed in Mumbai as a result of the tragedy and the terrorist attack on not only Chabad House, but also the hotels and restaurants. And it will be held at BZion at the America-Israel Friendship House. It'll be on Monday evening, the 29th, at 7 p.m. And everyone, of course, is invited. It will be done in words and music. We will have a number of Israeli entertainers. It is going to show how Israel memorializes the people who were tragically murdered in Mumbai.
Well, it sounds like a terrific program. Hanukkah is one of two rabbinical holidays that the Jews celebrate the world over. The other holiday is Purim. Hanukkah is a holiday that is to disseminate, to make known the miracle. In Hebrew it's called Pirsum Hanes. And that's the basic essence of the holiday of Hanukkah, to make known the miracle. There are a couple of miracles associated with Hanukkah. One is the military victory of the Maccabees against the Syrian Greeks. It was the few against the many, the weak against the strong, the holy against the unholy. And the Yehuda Maccabee and his sons and their cohorts defeated the Syrian Greeks. The other miracle, which is more universal, is the miracle associated with the oil. The Jewish people had the Jewish temple, the Holy Temple in Jerusalem, what we call the Beis HaMikdash, the Beit HaMikdash. And at that time, the Beit HaMikdash, the temple, was defiled by the Syrian Greeks. And they brought all kinds of negative things into the temple, and bad things and dirty things into the temple. And when the Jews came back to the temple after their victory, they saw one cad of shemen, one little capsule of oil that really ordinarily should have lasted one day, but it lasted for 8 days. The pure oil, the unopened oil. And for that we celebrate a miracle, that oil that should have lasted one day, so lasted 8 days. This is, the miracle has been the source of strength to the Jewish people throughout the millennia. The notion that regardless of how bad things appear to be or how bad things are, regardless of how much anti-Semitism there is in the world, still we believe in miracles. We believe in the sanctity of all human beings, regardless of race, color, or religion. And we believe that miracles could happen, that things that ordinarily you would expect not to happen, but they do happen, and they happen every day in our lives. They're miracles in people's lives. Some people who are watching this who are sick and feel they'll never get better, and they pray and they go to the best doctors and they have good companionship, and miracles, they get better. Same thing is true with with the Jewish people as a nation, that one will never expect come back. Let's come back when there's great sorrow, for instance, the Holocaust. Who would have expected the Jewish nation to reappear and to be recreated in the state of Israel and Medinat Yisrael? But many of us believe it was due to God's hand and a miracle that occurred. My colleague here, Mel, of course, has been involved in Jewish life, Jewish organizational life for decades, and his organization, BZion, which means Children of Zion, Children of Zion, is an organization that has played a very vital very vital part in the growth and the strength of Israel, particularly when it comes to health and education. And he's very well known throughout the Jewish world as someone who's played a very important role in the shaping of the state of Israel.
Thank you very much, Jerry, for that. Our organization, which is co-sponsoring the event on the 29th with the New York Board of Rabbis, the America-Israel Friendship League, which incidentally is the main sponsor of the judges' trip to Israel in the last couple of years, along with the Consulate of Israel, are going to present what we believe will be a wonderful evening for us to be able to truly pay tribute to those who lost their lives. The organization, as you say, BZion, has been involved in medicine and education and all kinds of children's programs in the state of Israel for so many years now that it's too long to even talk about. Our organization recently celebrated its 100th anniversary, and we're very proud of everything that we have accomplished. And I know that those people who've seen the work of BZion will join with me in praising the leadership of the organization over the 100 years that we've been around for what we have accomplished.
Yeah. Well, it comes
I know that Judge Thompson, who is our co-chair, can't wait to get back to Israel and loves that state more than I ever have, and has practically become your poster boy here. Between him and Judge Hornblass, you can't restrain this enthusiasm. And Mel, I know, cries every time he thinks of Israel, and every time there's somebody wounded, the tears are flowing. I've yet to reach that stage. With me, it's anger and not tears. But I go back to my original question. Tell me about those lights. I want to know how I can set up a menorah. What is the mitzvah involved with the menorah? Does it not involve actually going to light each night? Or does it simply involve now putting a menorah in the window and having it automatically go from day to day?
Well, actually, the knowledge that we get about the holiday of Hanukkah comes from the Talmud rather than the Torah, because it's not a Torah holiday. It's a rabbinic holiday. And we know that the rabbis and the Talmud have a discussion as to how do you light the candles. Do you start with 8 candles and every day light 8 candles? Or do you start with 1 and go from the first night 1 candle, the second night 2, so on and so forth, until the 8th night you have 8 candles? And this is a debate between the schools of thought in the Talmud, or the schools of Hillel and Shammai. And basically the answer is that we go Malim B'Kodesh, we rise up in holiness. So for the first night, we light 1 candle, and the second night 2 candles, and the third night 3 candles. And the motive of lighting the candles is to pirsum hanes, to make known the miracle. And that's why all of us, Jew and non-Jew, who wants to participate in the act of Hanukkah, the act of recognizing miracles and joy, that's why we light the candles outside in Israel. If one were to be in Israel, like in Jerusalem, and one were to be in the old city, boxes outside the houses are built, and the menorah is put into that box to shield it from the wind, and that's where it's lit so that everybody can see it. And of course in New York it's a little hard to have boxes outside, and our menorah is very small as compared to the Christmas tree. It's very, very small. But the menorah should be lit in a window so that people could see it. Particularly those of us that have private homes, it should be lit in the window and people could see it. I don't know how you feel, Shannon, but it's a joyful holiday because first we eat certain kinds of foods, donuts with jelly. It's great for the stomach.
Latkes.
Latkes we eat. It's true. Latkes is also great for the stomach. It's a secret Jewish weapon full of oil. It's better than some bombs. And it's traditional to give gifts, just as people give gifts on Christmas. It's traditional for people to give gifts. Some families have each child light a Hanukkah candle, and some families just have the head of the household light the Hanukkah candle. Some have, if there's, thank God, many children in a family, let's say 10 children, there are 10 menorahs, and on the 10th night, 10 candles for each menorah. That's, I'm not so good in the math, but how much
8
would that
candles for 10 menorahs is 80.
Is 80. No, but 80 times 10 children, that's...
No, it's 8 on the last night, times 10 menorahs is 80.
Is 80, okay, so 80 candles.
Plus the shamus.
And the shamus, which doesn't count, that's the lighter. And it's a wonderful holiday for people to observe and to be joyful. And we recognize in the liturgy, we say Al Hanisim v'Al Purkim v'Al Gvuros in the prayers that we say in the holiday of Hanukkah, and in the grace after meals we say, we speak about the joy of the holiday and about the miracle of the holiday too.
The menorah that Shannon was referring to is a battery-operated menorah where with bulbs, and when you turn the first bulb on, the first night of Hanukkah, automatically 24 hours later will light the second one, and then every day, 24 hours later, it will light another candle automatically. You don't have to touch it again.
Well, there is a question whether really the rabbis, the traditional rabbis that expound on the Talmud would accept that, because I think the preference is for the person
light it yourself.
To light it yourself,
right?
You know, but there are people that kind of menorah is very good for hospitals. In hospital settings where someone can't light a candle, a light, but they can use a battery-installed light to light a menorah. All hospitals have that in Hanukkah.
Or in places where it's dangerous because there's nobody around.
Exactly.
And you don't want to leave a lit candle.
Right, right. So we have,
what about the principle that the menorah must be visible, must be seen, overriding every other factor? As long as the menorah is seen, you're guaranteed that you don't have to come running home, and you're not going to be held back. It's going to be there, shining for all to see. I would think that this is a better operating menorah than most that we have.
Well, it sounds like, you know, people could explore it if they're not confident in themselves of being available to light the candles every night. But I should point out that the candles can be lit by anybody in the household, by the wife, by the husband, by the child, and they fulfill the mitzvah, they fulfill the commandment. It doesn't have to be by any particular person.
Absolutely.
The first one that lights the candle for the household, that's the one that does it. But there's certainly we want the children to be involved. We want all spouses to be involved in lighting the candles. But it's a joyful holiday. That's why next week, on the 29th, I think it is, Mel, you have your program?
Yeah.
What will the program consist of? Singing and dancing?
No dancing. It'll be a memorial where there'll be a number of speakers, including Rabbi Joseph Potasnik, the exec at the New York Board of Rabbis, and representatives of different organizations, and the Deputy Consul General of Israel, Benji Krasner, is supposed to be there, and Ron El-Iran and Yoel Sharabi and a number of other entertainers will sing appropriate songs to participate in a memorial.
Well,
Ron El-Iran has been on this show. Rabbi Potasnik has been our MC for the Clergy to Laugh With that we founded a long time ago, as well as for our semester comedy shows at various comedy clubs. All dear friends. But which is preferable, the oil or the candle? If you had your druthers, would you light oil? Would you light candles? Or is it convenience that in today's world is what you should defer to?
Well, basically, religiously, you want to have oil because that's where the miracle took place, with the oil in the temple. But if you can't have oil, then you have a candle, and if you can't have a candle, you have electrical device. But Mel's talking about a memorial, and I think you're talking about the Chabad people that were killed in India.
The reason we chose the date is because it's the end of Shloshim.
Now, the 30-day period, when Jews mourn, when there's a death, we have an intensive period of mourning during the Shiva, the 7 days of Shiva, then a less intensive period of mourning during the Shloshim, and then a less intensive than that period of mourning, which is during the first year. For the first year. And I'd like to just talk to you a bit about this Chabad and what happened in India. Chabad is a movement began by the Lubavitcher Rebbe. It's a Hasidic movement, and it believes in the sanctity of all human beings and the preciousness and the divinity of every human being. And it's made a very gallant and valiant effort to try to reach out to people who aren't observant, who aren't religious, to get them to taste and feel and smell the beauty of Judaism. And they've sent their emissaries, in Hebrew it's called the shluchim, as you know. Shlichim. And they've sent them really all over the world, to the farthest reaches of the world, including a place in India. And these are usually, they send young couples who are recently married, a man and his spouse. They're usually in their early 20s. They're all over the world. So if a Jewish person is traveling and they want to get a quorum to pray, a minyan, they know to call on the local phone, call the Chabad, and they'll give an address, and there'll be a service there. If a Jewish person from around the world is traveling to even the most remote places in South America, in Asia, in Africa, and they want to have a Sabbath meal, call the Chabad, and we know that the Chabad emissary will arrange for a Sabbath meal for you and for others. Now, so the terrible tragedy that took place in Mumbai, the tragedy is compounded because the people who were killed, the 6 people who were killed, including Rabbi Gabriel Holzberg and his wife, Rivka. The terrible tragedy is because they were bringing love and kindness and beauty to a community, and then for them to be killed in such a devastating way by a terrorist is mind-boggling. And the world has to really, frankly, just reject this kind of terrorism, this wholesale slaughter of innocent people, regardless of their religion or race. But for us, the Jewish people, of course, it's very upsetting to know that, sure, they targeted, all the places they targeted were terrible, the restaurants, the hotels, but it was only the Jewish people, Jewish religion that was targeted by these terrorists about 3 weeks ago in India. And of course it reminds us about the targeting of Jews throughout the ages, most particularly in the Holocaust that took place about 60 years ago. So we have a lot of work to do to bring sanity to an insane world and to bring love to a world that's full of hatred, Mel.
Absolutely.
Was the Chabad guarded? Were there security people in the Chabad in Mumbai knowing about these attacks coming from Muslims from Pakistan for so long, knowing that Jews are a target, knowing that India is a target, knowing that Mumbai is a target? Was this house filled with security independent of India's?
Well, I'm really not familiar with the security arrangements, and if I did know, I wouldn't tell you.
Can we draw a conclusion that they weren't evident if they were there at all?
Not necessarily. I mean, I don't know whether there were security people or not. I mean, we know from our own experience, our own terrible experience with 9/11 and terrorist incidents throughout the world afterwards, that it's virtually impossible to stop all terrorist incidents because the world is the stage for them. It's a hotel, it's a restaurant, it's a school.
If people are willing to die for what they believe, it's almost impossible to stop them, because they can blow themselves up, they can kill people without concern for what happens to them. There's nothing rational about what they're doing. Bernard Lewis, a professor in Israel, who's past 90 now, is an expert on Islam. And he wrote a book recently in which he pointed out that even in the religion of Islam, it is wrong to be a suicide bomber, because suicide is not revered in the Islamic tradition, and you don't go to heaven if you commit suicide, and you don't get the 70 virgins that they're supposed to get. So that it really is a wasted death for an Islamic person to go ahead and become a suicide bomber. How they sell this to these people is beyond me.
They sell it by hatred. That's what our organization is against, causeless hatred. Hatred sells very easily. But if that were true, and somebody could get in anywhere, then Israel would not have successfully, and it did it very successfully, stopped the onslaught of suicide bombers to the degree that it has over the last several years. If the Chabad house was securely guarded. They could not have been attacked in this fashion, but Mumbai itself has admitted it wasn't securely guarded.
And
the Indian security people admitted they failed.
And they were warned by the intelligence that this kind of an attack was coming by sea.
Not only they were warned, but they've had an experience of decades. They fought wars over this. And why was there no reaction beyond seeing the Secretary of State of the United States come over there with her hands wringing, asking Pakistan to do something, which of course Pakistan has not done? If you remember in the 1970s, when the PLO sent over its fighters from Jordan to Israel, Israel wouldn't waste a day. Israel would go into, whether it was Lebanon, whether it was Jordan, and they would take out those fighters, and Jordan had enough of it, as did Lebanon, and Jordan started a war with the PLO, and then the PLO turned on Jordan, and you eventually had what was called Black September, and you had Syria sending its tanks to take over Jordan, and you had Nixon asking Israel to block the Syrian tanks, and now you have a relationship between Israel and the United States that dates back to Israel successfully guarding Jordan from Syria's tanks, all because it wouldn't tolerate the attacks from Jordan by the PLO. Well, what gives between India and Pakistan? The Chabad attack, the devastation on the Chabad house is but one of these things. Are we going to be attacked around the world? Does Israel stand for the protection of Jews or not? Are Jews fair game all over the world?
Well, one of the strengths of Israel is that it reaches out to help and save Jews throughout the world. And I'll just mention a few areas in which they've done it. Some people know about, some they don't. We all know about what happened in 1976 in the Entebbe operation, where a plane, an Air France plane, was hijacked, and it was brought to Uganda, and the Israeli forces, led by Benjamin Netanyahu's brother, Yonatan, actually went from Israel to Uganda.
On July 4th.
On July 4th, 1976, when we were all celebrating the Independence Day, the bicentennial of the United States, and went on that July 4th and actually saved all the passengers and all the crew from the plane. And that required a tremendous amount of skill, courage, and commitment and dedication. Israel did it then to save the passengers and the crew at that time. Let me give you another instance where Israel's arm has, the outstretched arm of peace and decency has been utilized, and that was in Operation Moses and Operation Solomon, where thousands of Jewish people who are black, living in Ethiopia, have been brought to Israel, and were brought to Israel then and continue to be brought to Israel now, in an effort that defied any kind of humanitarian understanding.
15,000 people in one weekend were airlifted from Ethiopia, from the Sudan, into Israel.
And it was very difficult because there was a civil war going on at that time. And Israel, through some help, diplomatic help from some other countries, through its own initiative, brought 15,000 people in one weekend. And Mel, I'm told that in one of those planes, it's an El Al passenger plane, they took all the seats out.
Mm-hmm.
And apparently there were, in a plane that carries maybe 400 people, I don't know the details, but it was something like over a couple of thousand people.
It was over 1,000, I know that.
Over 1,000, yeah. Over 1,000 people were brought from Africa to Israel. Now, thank God, with these thousands of Jews from Ethiopia, many of whom are very pious and very religious, and have a place to stay, a place to live, and in the Israeli society, they're respected, they're loved, they're beloved, and that's the kinds of thing, in answer to your question, Shannon, what Israel has done. So we've gone over two areas. The first area was what? Shannon, you listening?
I'm always listening to you, Your Honor. The first was Entebbe, which has not been equaled by any other nation on the planet in history. It was the most marvelous thing while we're celebrating our bicentennial, and all the Jews were, like in '67, wondering what's going to happen here. Shimon Peres and the Rabin government came forward and rescued an entire plane under Idi Amin's hostage-taking circumstances. And he, if you remember, took it out on a defenseless elderly woman in the hospital, Dora Bloch.
Dora Bloch, right.
Dora Bloch. And nobody remembers Dora Bloch. as having been sacrificed by those Ugandans, but Idi Amin got his because within a few years the civil war wiped out his supporters, and he sought refuge where till he died? Saudi Arabia.
Well, I'll tell you, Shannon, you know, when we speak in a pessimistic tone and we talk about how bad it is, I think it's very good and it's refreshing and it's correct and it's reasonable to recall these wonderful instances where people of goodwill, like the Israelis and the Israeli Defense Forces, where they go and help people out. Bring thousands of people from Ethiopia. Go to other places. And I'll tell you one other area where Israel is very important. It was very important in the post-Holocaust era for the Jews who survived and the Jews who were killed, the 6 million Jews who were killed, to have some evidence that Israel made a difference. And the capture of Eichmann was very important. Without a Jewish state, Eichmann wouldn't have been captured, wouldn't have been put on trial, wouldn't have had the whole story unfold. It gave vent to Jews who survived an opportunity to vent themselves.
Well, on that note, Mel, are you aware of the movie Defiance that's coming out December 30th by the fantastic director Ed Zwick, who did Glory, about the black regiment that took the fort in Charleston, who did Courage Under Fire and just did Blood Diamond. He's doing the first major motion picture about the Jewish resistance, the Belsky brothers from Poland.
Well, I wasn't aware of it, but I'm glad you told us about it, and we will look forward to it.
There's a BZion project. There's where you can get your organization internationally behind this movie, the first major motion picture to celebrate the Jewish resistance, not just the victims, enough to be celebrated that they survived, and to commemorate, memorialize them, but the heroes, to commemorate the heroes. My father, who was in the Maquis and the partisans, to get the Jews, the young Jews, out to see the Jewish heroes of the Holocaust. This is a message of Hanukkah in our time. We have a minute left, gentlemen. Any closing thoughts?
Well, I very much appreciate the fact that we have the support of judges from every religion and every racial group. You mentioned before Judge Thompson. We started the group right after the Crown Heights riots. There was an indication that it was important for judges to be involved and try to bring order and civility. And I'm very hopeful, particularly now with the new President of the United States, that there will be ushering a new era, an era of reconciliation and understanding of peace, and people will have the joy of Hanukkah, regardless of their religious beliefs, but that should be inculcated in them. And I'm very happy that we have our group, not just Blacks and Jews in Conversation, and I thank Mel for helping us get to Israel with our judges. We will hope to do it again, because there's nothing like seeing Israel up front and up close and to see a miracle that was actually made.
I'm very happy to be able to help, and I'm very happy that the America-Israel Friendship League, which is a non-sectarian organization, can do as much as it does.
Thank you both, and I hope to see you again here soon. A happy Hanukkah.
Happy Hanukkah.
Happy holidays.
Happy Hanukkah.